All right, gonna try to do a rapid fire video here. Um, Otherwise, I'm just not gonna get to one this week. Busy week, a lot of stuff going on with school. But god damn. First, we'll start out with a quick recap. Sometimes you have a good week. Sometimes you got a bad week. Sometimes it'd be like that. So just quick rundown of my picks. I had a disastrous week. Of the picks I recommended in the video, I ended up getting one right. And then I took another bet that I didn't recommend in the video. I think I was maybe mentioned I was leaning one way. But I basically got two games right and the rest were wrong, which is just statistically amazing that I could be that wrong when, the book is always right, right? They set these spreads and sometimes they make no sense to us, and then lo and behold, like the real game happens and boom, somehow Vegas figured it out. Like, you can't make this shit up. This week was not so much like that. Like, so many games went so wrong, but in a given week, you should have about a 50-50 chance, and I got so many wrong. It was amazing. So bear with me. I've never branded myself as an expert. I'm just someone who's interested in it, and if you are looking for another opinion, want to hear some ideas, I'm your guy. You want to ride with me? You're gonna die with me sometimes. All right, first off, so these are my tier one bets from last week. Hawks at Bills. So the Bills were back, baby. Like, all of a sudden, the Bills looked competent again after a couple miserable weeks. And the Seahawks, their defense is terrible, but Russell threw some bad interceptions when I was watching that game too. Like, every time it felt like, okay, here's some momentum. Let's get back in this. Boom, interception. Boom, interception. I don't know. He's been kind of a turnover monster the last couple weeks, and like I said, that's going to happen when you put it all on him. Texans at Jaguars. This was going my way. The Texans were winning that game pretty dominant, but Luton, the quarterback for the Jaguars did enough, and he scored a garbage time rushing touchdown to cover the spread. Brutal. Patriots at Jets. This was last tier one I felt good about. Patriots almost lost that game. Ended up winning on like a 51-yard field goal right as time expired. They were minus 7.5 favorites. So they did not cover that. Oh, just a brutal outing. All of a sudden, Joe Flacco was looking like a decent quarterback all of a sudden. I don't know the Pats, I had a little faith that they'd bounce back with some good coaching and some solid defense. That did not happen. Tier 2 bets, real quick. Broncos and Falcons. I liked the Broncos +4. They kind of laid a stinker against Atlanta. Couldn't really get things going against a bad Atlanta D. And their defense kind of didn't have the tough performance they had previously in this year. Bears at Titans. I should have known better to trust the Bears. They burn me every time I kind of put myself out there. Meanwhile, the Titans burn me every time I bet against them. But the Titans have burned me when I bet for them as well. So I don't know. But the Bears' offense it sucks. It's really bad. And the first 5 games they started out 5-1 or something like that, and everyone's called them out as fraudulent. And we all knew it, but I still thought like a tough defense would make it easy to cover some decently sized spreads. They were +5.5. Didn't happen. Bears suck. Panthers at Chiefs. Finally, something I had a read on. I'm like, the Panthers are too good of a team to be +11 point underdogs, even if they're playing the Chiefs at Arrowhead. And I was finally fucking right about something. Panthers actually led for a chunk of that game. I thought Teddy played pretty well when I was watching. Christian McCaffrey ended up getting kind of hurt again. He got plenty of work, and fantasy-wise, I'm sure people were excited to see that, but now it sounds like he's kind of hurt again. So that was kind of a bummer, but Panthers cover the double-digit spread. Finally, a winning story. On to the tier 2 bets. These are bets I wasn't as confident in for whatever reason, but still, felt pretty good about. First one, Steelers at Cowboys. Steelers are minus 14.5 point favorites. Cowboys hadn't covered a spread yet this year. Steelers, good team. Cowboys, bad team. What the hell? All of a sudden, the Cowboys and I can't even remember that guy's name. What was that guy's name? Grant Gillis, some like CFL quarterback. What was his name? Garrett Gilbert. All of a sudden, comes out and is contending with the 8-0 or the 7-0 Steelers at that point. I just don't even get it. Can't make it up. Steelers end up winning. I mean, that's kind of classic Steelers, is to like let bad teams hang in it, but it's kind of been a thing over the Tomlin era. I felt whenever there's a gimme, they kind of play down to their opponent's level. But they grind out a win, but they don't even get close to covering that spread. Dolphins at Cardinals. So this one I feel like I could have foreseen, actually. So I sided with the Cardinals -4.5. Ended up going the other way. I was sleeping on Tua. Tua didn't do much in his debut game. There were some special teams touchdowns, some defensive touchdowns. Kind of hid his performance. I think he had under 100 passing yards. So I was like, okay, Cardinals, pretty good team this year. Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury and, DeAndre Hopkins. Christian Kirk was starting to get going. Chase Edmonds was looking lively. So, I'll take the Cardinals. Something that, like a proven product that I've seen versus kind of the unknown that was the Dolphins. But things I didn't know, or things I did probably know and, should have taken into account, is that the Dolphins, they were winning with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but like I kept saying, like they have an underrated defense. They got a solid defense. They got a good coach, Brian Flores. And I shouldn't have just assumed he was, I shouldn't have slept on Brian Flores and how well constructed this Dolphins team and how quickly they've kind of turned around this Dolphins team into a very solid team. They still got holes. They still got some things to work on, but Dolphins are a really solid team. So it's not shocking to me in hindsight that the Dolphins go out and upset. Tua, still a first-round pick, still a talented, college player. So with some good coaching and some good, I think they got another defensive touchdown or special teams touchdown, but with a good coaching and, a good defense and a talented arm, doesn't shock me. I still probably would take the Cardinals, I guess I'm not kicking myself for that one, but God, kind of just bad weekend for that one to happen, right? When everything else was going wrong. Saints at Bucks. Speaking of everything going wrong, what the hell was that? Like, the Buccaneers have all of a sudden become the most inconsistent team in football. Like, they go from, blowing out the Packers, or so what, they get beat on, like, primetime against the Bears, who are fucking awful. And then they put out a dominant performance the next week. They dominate the Packers. I don't remember what week that was. And then they come out against a division rival at home. They started at -5.5 point favorites. And I'm like, that's kind of a lot of points. Saints aren't that bad. Michael Thomas is coming back. But, Noodle Arm Breeze, he's nothing special. Like, strong Bucks defense against Kamara. I'll take the Bucks. Then during the week, the line slowly moves in favor of the Saints. And I think by the time it kicked off, it was like -2.5 points to the Bucks. So I'm like sitting there putting more bets on the Bucks, as the week goes on. And I still feel fine about it, And then Tom Brady goes out and plays the worst game of his life. Bucks defense is a complete no-show. All of a sudden, Breeze is back. They got Jameis Winston eating W's at the end of the game. I don't know what that was. I'm fucking staying away from the Bucks, but watch. They'll go lay out another dominant performance this next week. But god damn, it's hard to trust them. And I got bit hard by that Buccaneers game. I also got bit hard by that Seahawks game, but we talked about that. The rest of the games were avoids. I mean, one I talked myself into getting into was Ravens at Colts. Ended up taking the Ravens. Ended up being right on that one. That's about all I got for the recap. So moving on to Week 10. I mean, that's all you can do, really, right? Is just move on with the next week. Try to get back in it. I'm definitely going to have to change strategy, be a little more hesitant, be a little more conservative now that I knocked down my bankroll pretty considerably this last week. All my gains from the previous weeks have kind of been wiped out, and now I'm in the red again. But we can work back into it. I only have one Tier 1 bet this week. So just to reiterate, Tier 1 bets, these are ones I feel good about. Kind of have no problem putting money on and recommending others to put money on. Tier 2 bets, which I'll hit next, are kind of games I know I'm going to have a hand in. I'm leaning strongly towards one side, but not so much that I'm like ultra confident or that I would, put a large wager on. And then I got avoids, and these are games where there's enough uncertainty, in my heart or in my head, or it's a shit matchup and I don't want to touch it anyway. Those are the avoids. So one Tier 1 bet for the week, I got Ravens at Patriots. Ravens are -7 point favorites. And I would not be surprised. So I think this is Sunday Night Football. I would not be surprised if this moves to, insanely slanted towards the. Looks like I'm missing. I just realized I'm probably missing some games that aren't off the board, or so whatever. But these are the ones on the board. Ravens at Patriots. Ravens minus 7 points, favored. I'll take that. They should be double digits. Patriots, almost got beat by the Jets last week. They're terrible. And you know what? One angle on this though I do have. I'm not just reacting to last week. Bill Belichick consistently tends to do bad against running quarterbacks. I'm pretty sure Lamar Jackson sliced and diced up the Patriots in the past, and Cam Newton has a crazy good record against the Patriots. Running quarterbacks definitely give Bill Belichick some trouble. So that's a big reason I'm siding with the Ravens here. And besides the fact that they're just a much more solid team than the Patriots right now, and how pitiful Cam Newton and the rest of the Patriots roster has played. So I'll take the Ravens minus 7 and feel really good about that. The rest of the games this week I don't feel as good about. I mean, there's been a lot of inconsistency in the NFL. A lot of teams I don't trust. Two teams I don't trust. First tier 2 bet here is Colts at Titans. So these are two teams that are hard to trust, right? The Colts look great against bad opponents, and then against good opponents, it kind of shows the chinks in their armor. Last week, I don't think they played quite as bad as the box score might say. I know Phil Rivers made a really spectacular tackle attempt in that game. I did see that. Didn't watch a ton of the game, but they still got a strong defensive line. Their offensive line's good. I think they can run the ball, although that's kind of like a three-headed monster right now. The Titans defense, Titans played well last week, but I still think the Titans defense is not very good. Tannehill, Vrabel, they're good coaches, but I just think when you look at everything except the quarterback, the Colts, kind of have the edge. I guess, and the Titans kind of have the edge when it comes to Tannehill, A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry. But, gosh, now I'm talking myself out of it. But I don't know. I think these are pretty comparable teams. I think this is a good matchup, good division game. I'm going to take the Colts plus the 2, just because I just think they're a better team overall and have been more consistent. And I think that defensive line is going to give the Titans some trouble because, they lost Taylor Lewan and they just haven't quite been the same since. So, going to waffle a little bit. I mean, obviously it's a tier 2 bet, but I'll take the Colts plus 2 against the Titans. And if Vrabel kind of shows up and shows out, I guess it won't shock me. I mean, Tannehill can do that as well. But I get a plus 2 point cushion. And the Titans, even when they win, they often win close. So, next game, Texans at Browns. Browns, I'm siding with the Browns minus 3. I just think the Texans, they got rid of Bill O'Brien, so some of their problems are gone, but that roster still has problems. They lost David Johnson, but their running game wasn't really that special already. Their defense has full of holes, is not particularly good. On offense, you got Deshaun Watson, you got some, he can sling to some pretty good weapons, but, kind of a mediocre performance last week against the Jaguars, and the Browns are a much better team than that. Baker Mayfield on a COVID list right now. I'm expecting him to be back, but we all know that the passing game is not quite where the Browns make their bread. I think Nick Chubb is on schedule to be back, and Kareem Hunt is still in the mix. You still got Landry. I just think Kevin Stefanski and that solid running attack is going to be able to take care of the Texans. I mean, will Deshaun Watson prove me wrong because I'm betting against him? Probably, but I'm going to take the Browns minus the 3. One of the few games this week I like. Bills at Cardinals. So right now, this is a game. The Bills have been so inconsistent, and yes, they had a good week last week against the Seahawks, but the Seahawks have a terrible defense, and I still think the Bills defense, they're bad. They have not played well. One game is not going to convince me that all of a sudden they're a dominant defensive, powerhouse by picking off Russell Wilson a couple times. I think the Cardinals have more of kind of a balanced operation going on in the Seahawks, and I think they have shown kind of week after week to be far more consistent. And I think, at home, minus 1.5, I like them to get the win against a Bills team that's really been hit and miss. I think Cardinals have a solid enough defense to give Josh Allen some trouble. And I think Kyler Murray and the offensive weapons he has can get the job done. It's possible, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs really take over this game and John Brown gets involved, but I'm leaning heavily towards the Cards in this one. Yeah, I'm going to leave it as a tier two, but I like the Cards -1.5. Next game, I probably am not going to end up betting this one because these two teams faced off recently, and it's in like a Thursday night football, or it was a primetime game. Eagles at Giants. I think it was Giants at Eagles last time. Uh, Man, Joe Judge is making me pay every time I bet against him. Bet against him last week and they burned me. Ultimately, I think the Giants have had their struggles. Offensively, they've been pretty bad. The quarterback, Danny Dimes, he struggled. Their weapons have struggled to kind of stay healthy and consistent. They lost Saquon Barkley early in the year. The offensive line still sucks. So problems there. But Joe Judge is a pretty good coach, and they made some special teams plays, unless I'm thinking of the wrong game. And their defense has quietly performed pretty well. And there's some exceptions, but I think they've done a pretty good job of not getting blown out. Now, that said, the Eagles, they're -3.5 point favorites. And, when they played a couple weeks ago, I'm like, the Eagles are a better team. They're competing with better opponents. And that blew up in my face. But the Eagles are coming off a bye. They're getting Miles Sanders back. They got Jalen Reagor back. They got Goddard. Dallas Goedert's coming back. Maybe Alshon Jeffrey plays. Maybe he doesn't. Don't care. Ultimately, I just think coming off the bye, Doug Peterson, division opponent, they got to make it right against last time they played this Giants team. Just a better team overall. Wentz, he struggled this year, but he's got some of his weapons back. He's a better quarterback than Danny Dimes. Than Daniel Jones. I feel safe in saying. So I like the Eagles here, and I think Miles Sanders, hopefully he can make his presence known, and I'll take the Eagles -3.5. But two NFC East teams. I've made this mistake too many times. I'm gonna bet on it, but it's gonna be small. Last tier 2 bet I got. This is one where I don't even think I've picked a side yet. Right now I got Chargers. It's Chargers at Dolphins, -2.5. I think the Dolphins are favored -2.5. So you have Justin. Then this is a 3 o'clock game. This is like the only good 3 o'clock game. So this is appointment television for me. I'm really excited to see Justin Herbert and this Chargers team versus the Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa and kind of the solid operation that Brian Flores has going on there. Ultimately, I am siding just based on history. I think I got to side with the Dolphins here because I just think they're a better coach team. They got a solid defense and they performed far more consistently throughout the year. And the Chargers, I guess to be fair, the Chargers have been consistent, and they've been consistent in disappointing at the end of the game. So I think you just got to look at history there and take the Dolphins. And that's probably the way I'm going to go. But if I think Justin Herbert is ultimately a better quarterback at this point, and has shown quite a bit in his short career. So would it surprise me if Justin Herbert pulls it off? I don't know. But I'm gonna probably waffle about this all week. Right now I'm leaning Dolphins, but I am going to have money on that game because I know I'm going to watch it. That is too good of a game to, ignore. So then the other games this week, I'm avoiding all of these. So just as quick as I can here, Jaguars versus the Packers. I like the Packers to win this one handily, but -13.5 is the spread. That's a lot of points, double digits. Do I want to mess around with that? Maybe. I might talk myself into taking the Jags plus 13.5 just because the Packers defense hasn't been that good. But Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, who knows? I'm probably not going to mess around with that one. Another game, Bucks at Panthers. Bucks are -5.5 point favorites. Panthers are a team that has played pretty well throughout the year despite not being a particularly talented roster. So I'm not comfortable with the Bucks right now, just the way they performed. I would not be shocked if they have a bounce back game here and look unstoppable, because that's kind of their MO. But you burned me once. I don't know. I just got to stay out of it this week. I can't touch them. They hurt me too bad last week. Broncos at Raiders. So I actually like the Raiders in this one, but right now the Raiders are -5 point favorites, and I think that's just a little too rich for my blood. If this was like a -3 or less Raiders, I would probably be betting them as a tier 2 just because I think they're a better team than the Broncos. The Broncos I think they've kind of had a roller coaster year. They just lost to a bad Falcons team this last week. Locke, I don't want to call this a lost season because he's got some time, but I mean, he missed some time and he's never had his weapons, and they kind of got the crew together, but I still think they're learning how to gel. Kind of a young team. Their defense has played well until kind of lately. I don't know. I just don't have a ton of faith in the Broncos right now. And the Raiders, I think, are just kind of playing a better football and just have a better roster, kind of with what John Gruden has going there. So I lean Raiders, but not at -5. Um, Hawks at Rams. Right now, the Rams are -1.5 point favorites. I'm leaning towards the Hawks. +1.5. It's at Rams, division game. I think the Rams have played pretty well at home in their new stadium. I'm just probably not going to touch it. I mean, the Hawks have just been a little too inconsistent of late. The Rams got a good defense. Aaron Donald. Sometimes their offense is clicking, and Sean McVay shows old Sean McVay, and sometimes he doesn't. So I'm not going to touch that one. 49ers at Saints. Right now, Saints are -9.5 point favorites, and that's the side I'm leaning. But -9.5 is quite a bit of points. Kyle Shanahan, I mean, he's struggling to fight through these injuries, but I mean, on that Thursday night football game, there was a weird COVID situation. He lost even more players, and that shouldn't be a factor going into this Saints game. So I think he's going to have a better plan going forward here, and he's had an extra day or two to get ready. I'm not going to bet against him in a almost -10 point spread, even given all those injuries. I don't think the Saints are as good as they showed against the Bucs, even with Michael Thomas back. Vikings at Bears this is my last avoid, but I'm kind of just avoiding this because I'm a Vikings fan. Right now, the line is at Vikings -2.5. And if you look at the past 2 weeks, I could not blame you for saying the Vikings are going to win this game. But the problem is it's at Soldier Field. The Vikings have won at Soldier Field like twice in the last decade, maybe only once. So I think what I would recommend to you, if you have no emotions tied to this game, despite what I said about the Bears being trash earlier in this video, I think the smart money is taking the Bears +2.5 and or the Bears money line, because the Vikings just don't get it done against the Bears, and they're still a 3-5 team. Like, expecting them to get it done this week just because the Bears have shown poor performances lately, I think is a little foolish. I mean, if you want, I can see both ways. I'm avoiding it. Maybe Dalvin Cook does Dalvin Cook things and takes over this game again. But looking at history and just gut feel, I would recommend the Bears +2.5. But that's all I got. Probably a little longer than I was planning. But thanks for hanging in there with me. Good luck to you guys.